Today, we are going to be talking about some upcoming films, some new trailers, and reviewing Split, Hidden Figures, and The Founder. On top of that, we're also going to be talking about The Walking Dead, so stay tuned.
Welcome to The Real Review.
Welcome to The Real Review, sponsored by Parametric and Lazy Ape Studios, where you get some of the latest happenings, real thoughts, and perspectives in the world of TV and film. I'm here with Matt. Is that your final answer? Hey, and who am I, Matt?
And I'm with Joel the Last Cunningham.
Oh, I'm the last Cunningham. I've slayed my opposition, and I'm the final one now, I suppose. How are you doing, Matt?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. This has been an interesting last couple of weeks. We've got a lot of films that we've had a chance to watch.
I know, not even like enough time to review them all. So many
really?
films. It's crazy.
Absolutely. So maybe at some point we'll do an episode where we do a catch-up of all the films that we haven't gotten to. But I just want to, greet everybody and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time checking us out here, The Real Review is basically a podcast where Matt and I discuss TV and films and give you our own personal perspectives and thoughts on those TVs, shows, and films. And we try to do it with a little bit of a East meets West kind of a flair, if you will. It's the middle road between the critic and the fan. And so we want to remind you as well at the very beginning that this month we are still continuing on with our contest. So would you like to tell them about that, Matt?
Yes, the contest is a chance to win a $50 gift card to a theater of your choice. That's 50.
50 big ones.
Yes. So that's coming mainly out of Joel's pocket. And the way that you can get entered into this contest, it's pretty simple. All you got to do is subscribe to the podcast. You got to write a review and go ahead and email us at realreviewmedia@gmail.com and let us know you did that. And you're entered. And it's that simple.
It's so simple. And we've already had a number of people enter. And, if you don't want an opportunity, you don't have to enter. But it's a pretty simple thing to do to get entered in the contest. So, yeah, we'd love to have you enter. And then as well, we just want to make sure everybody knows, definitely check out our Facebook page where Matt and I are anxiously awaiting numerous different bits of news and information to come out so we can post them straight up on there. And that's actually at facebook.com/realreviewmedia. And real, as always, is spelled REEL, like the film reel.
Yeah, there you go.
Cool. So why don't we get right into some of our discussion on some new trailers?
Yes. So some new trailers dropped this week. A few, actually. But namely, I wanted to start off with the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah. So this one's kind of taken on a different tone for me after seeing the second trailer. And I actually texted you this as a joke, but I think it's a bit honest. I've kind of changed the name of the Power Rangers now to the Mighty Morphin Michael Bangers. I think they've taken on this new sense where before it kind of felt like, well, maybe they're trying to do something where they're just making a little bit more action, kind of updating the look and the feel. And obviously the original Power Rangers, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I did watch some as a child, was kind of this weird hybrid of like Japanese shooting where they actually took actual Japanese fighting scenes of people in these costumes and then interspersed that with these kind of like high school shots that were filmed on different cameras and different look. And so it made for this weird aesthetic thing, but it was kind of cool in a way, kind of like fantasy surrealness. But it was always very cheesy. It was always very tongue-in-cheek. It was always crazy things happening and monsters popping up that are made out of like, jelly or something like that. And it definitely feels like with this one, they're going very honest and very real. I mean, there's like a scene in the preview now where the mom's like, pee in this cup, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wow, if that's not jarring in comparison to what they've been like and where they've been at, I don't know what is. What are your thoughts, Matt?
I grew up with the Power Rangers.
Okay. Were you a fan?
I was a fan.
Were you fighting in Power Ranger outfits and everything?
I was the Red Ranger for Halloween.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
True confessions of a Matt Hay.
9?
9.
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
8? Something.
Yeah.
I was young.
It sounds about right. Yeah.
This is actually last week, guys. I'm totally kidding. So
photos. We need photos.
Proof. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
So So I saw this and I'm a little bit excited about it. And yes, there are cheesy elements to the trailer, this new trailer. I was probably more on board with the first trailer because it gave more of a kind of a serious tone.
Yeah.
This new one, a little less serious.
Yeah.
You get to see the Zords, which is kind of cool. So in a sense, I'm kind of hoping that a lot of the mechanical monsters and stuff and the Zords of the Power Rangers, when they fight, it's kind of like Pacific Rim-esque,
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I think the Rita character played by Elizabeth Banks, I think she looks pretty cool. There's actually one shot in that trailer I was like, that is kind of a cool shot.
Yeah.
And so we'll see. There's, you can't really talk a lot about it. I mean, it comes out in 2 months. So
yeah, I agree with a lot you're saying. I do think it has still a bit of interest for me, but I'm approaching it now, I think, out of the mindset that it's going to be, like I said, something like a Michael Bay film.
Right.
The aesthetics kind of feel that way, and I think Michael Bay gets a lot of flack for doing really bad films. He can do decent projects. He can do good films. I've seen him in a couple times that I'm like, okay, like it's just really what you said earlier, which I agree is his story, which I'm getting way into a different track here. But I think as well with this film, it really will come down to the story. I think it's really going to come down to what they're doing with the characters in the story. I don't expect personally this amazingly huge acting job to come from the characters. I don't think that's what the script is going to call for.
Yeah.
It's more about the aesthetics and the explosions and the fun. I love Elizabeth Banks for the most part as an actress. I'm really looking forward to seeing her in that role.
Yeah.
I think that there's a couple other big names that are attached to it as well. Bryan Cranston, who's playing Zordon. So, which is really only a face.
Right.
But it'll be interesting to see. I'm mildly excited for it. I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah. Well, give it a shot. I'm excited for it. Not over the moon, but I'm going to check it out. So yeah.
Yeah. So go Power Rangers.
Make it happen.
What's our next trailer, Matt?
So there was also a new trailer released this week for Logan.
Yes.
And it's a second full-length trailer. I guess there were 2 versions out. The one that I saw first was the red band version, and I was like, wow, this is intense for a trailer. I was like, oh, it's a red band version.
Yeah.
And which, if you don't know what that means, a red band version means it's for restricted audiences. It's not something that, hey, let your kid come see this trailer for this new Wolverine movie because it's pretty violent and there's cursing or whatever it may be. But everything I see, every piece of marketing that I see come out for this film has me more and more excited. This most recent one, it showcases the little girl a little bit more, which is more and more, they haven't come out and say it, but looks like it's going to be with the character X-23.
Right. You see the claws pop out.
Like bloody claws, and it's intense. And it starts off with her, kind of a humorous scene in a convenience store, which I thought was kind of funny. But everything that's come out for this, there's no question right now that that it's going to be good for me. I think I'm going to enjoy it. It's everything. It's hitting all the right notes for me. I don't know. How are you feeling about it so far?
I'm different. Of course I am, right? So I had some misgivings at the start of this one, and the biggest reason for it was really some comments that I had heard from the director initially in some interviews that he had done, basically where he was talking about the style of the film and how they were trying to make it different. And James Mangold is his name. And he'd been saying how the previous films had really just been a lot of action. And I agree, especially with the first, independent film for Wolverine. It was a very bad film, but it was mostly just a setup for a lot of action and craziness. And so he said that he really wanted to tie in some dramatic story and family elements to the story. So that doesn't necessitate that it's going to be a bad thing for me, but when I also look at his credits, and he did Walk the Line, which I loved. Walk the Line. He did Girl Interrupted. I thought that was a good film, but he's done these really strong, dramatic, serious type films. He also did 3:10 to Yuma, which is a pretty solid action film. I thought.
Love 3:10 to Yuma.
So I kind of had hope in both directions for it, and he did the Wolverine. I had hopes for him as an action guy, and I had hopes for him in the dramatic side of things, but my fear is starting to get closer along the lines of what role the child is going to play. And the biggest thing that I keep coming back to is it's so often that child can really pull me personally out of a film.
Right.
When I see the child interacting and acting in a way that is just... I've worked with kids. I've done a lot of, photography and stuff for kid camps and things like that. And when I see kids acting in a way that I'm like, kids don't act that way. They just don't act that way. It takes me out of a movie.
Right.
And oftentimes it's a bad actor situation, which I don't think it is. It looks like she's doing a good job with the role.
Yeah.
But it's more just, I don't know if I'm going to be able to break away from the surrealness of her acting this way as a young child. And I know people are probably freaking out all over the place and going, well, she's a comic book character and she's got these mutant powers and everything. And I'm probably being too, but I'm just saying I'm hesitant.
Yeah. No
So,
worries.
yeah.
I get that. Yeah, she's as far as I know, she's supposed to be a clone of sorts from Wolverine's DNA.
Yeah.
So that's...
I just, the big thing is I just don't want to see Wolverine the father, I mean, it's good in a way, but it's like I don't need to see that side of Wolverine. Wolverine isn't interesting to me because of that part of his character. He's interesting to me more because of his history and his suffering and his pain and trying to overcome those. And it's not interesting to me to think, okay, well, he's got a kid, and so that's suddenly suspenseful. So we'll see, though.
Yeah.
It could be proven they could set it up perfectly and have the right catalyst and the right reasons, and we'll see.
It comes out in like a month and a half, so it's not that far away.
Yeah, not too far now.
So those are just a couple of the new trailers that came out this week. Next, I want to launch right into our review segment, and I want to start off with a doozy, Joel. How about we start with Split?
Ooh, that's a good one to start with. Well, Split is a film that's directed by M. Night Shyamalan, or Shyamalama, as some people like to call him. It's a film about 3 girls that are kidnapped by a man who's diagnosed with 23 distinct personalities and must try to escape before the apparent emergence of a frightful new 24th. That's from IMDb. It stars James McAvoy as our main protagonist. More main antagonist, if you will.
Right.
And then Anna Taylor-Joy and Haley Lou Richardson, and then a friend of theirs, which I don't have her name in front of me.
It's all good.
Yes. So this film was interesting to me. I still say going into this, I still had really, really low expectations for the overall film because I think I've just had so many bad experiences with M. Night Shyamalan films over the last little while. But he really did surprise me with this film. And I think the first thing that really stood out to me about this film is the cinematography. And I felt like some of the cinematography and some of the scenes early on was so effective and so realistic, especially in the very first scene almost. It felt like if I was going to experience this, even up to the point where they're being taken and they're being put in this captive place, this is almost like how I would experience it or see it or feel it. And it really, at times as well, throughout the script, like there's a scene where James McAvoy's this character where he's this kid and he's kind of doing this dance thing for one of the girls, and it was so weird, and the way that they shot it was so perfect in just making me feel that it was just weird and it was disjointed and it didn't quite fit, and so it emotionally did a great job with the cinematography. So I don't want to talk too much about this because I also want to get your perspective on it as well. I could probably talk a lot. I think James McAvoy did an amazing job overall. I think it's a really difficult thing to take on a role where you have this many characters and they all have to have their own distinct flair and their own distinct feeling. And I think there was a couple of characters where I'm like, they kind of seem like maybe shades of themselves, but there was definitely strength in each of the characters and they all felt distinctly different. And it definitely felt like he would be the kind of person that's, struggling with this dissociative identity disorder that he's struggling through.
Yeah.
I thought that they did a great job with the overall progression. I think where it really didn't hit for me and where it kind of fell apart really came close to the end. In particular, there was, Shyamalan is known for these Shyamalan twists that he kind of throws out over the course of the film. And there was something like a twist that happens close to the end, and then something like a twist again that happens at the very end. And both of those for me were like interesting, but at the same time, I didn't really feel like it was a twist for me. Neither of them really felt like they were things that overall changed, like a twist. And this is something we could definitely do in Critic Corner at some point. But like a twist to me, Book of Eli, I get back and forth feed. I get people attacking me all the time for my views on that, and I don't want to spoil anything for that movie either. But to me, that's not a twist at the end because it has to overall change how things have progressed and why they've acted a certain way and why things are the way they are throughout the course of the film, but in a way that you never realize. It has to open up some new bit of information that impacts the entire film. And people say, Book of Eli totally did that for them. And I'm like, well, go back and watch the film again. You realize that, he probably would have done all of the same stuff in the same exact way if it hadn't been, even if he hadn't had that twist at the end of the film. But sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But same thing with Split here. I thought it was a great film overall. The ending kind of left me a little bit disjointed as far as kind of solidly. And the thing that we all said at the end, I was watching this with my mom and a couple other people, my girlfriend, my sister, and we all kind of felt like, well, it just didn't satisfy. It didn't leave with the sense of, yeah, I'm glad that happened that way, or, oh my goodness, I can't believe how crazy that was. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
So I went into this highly anticipating it. Obviously, we talked about it earlier in the first or second one, just podcast talking about our most anticipated for this year. And so I went in really excited because I liked Shyamalan's Last, The Visit. I really enjoyed. So this one, a little bit different. It's not really horror. Yeah. I'd say a more psychological suspense thriller.
Yeah, close to the end, it gets a little horrific.
A little bit, yes.
But not too much. A little bit of gross.
So, right. So it was kind of weird for me. I felt all right. Like, I was like, okay, I like it.
Yeah.
I agree. I like the cinematography. And yes, James McAvoy. That was incredible to me. Like, he deserves something for that. I don't know what he deserves, but it was incredible. Just what he did with all of those different characters, namely Hedwig.
Yeah.
But for me, I just felt all right. I didn't feel like I was invested, but like not to the extent that I wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. I think there's two spots in this film, one close to the end and the one literally at the very end.
Yeah.
That people are saying are twists. The first one, I didn't really see as a twist. I just saw it as like the normal progression of the movie and something that I even gleaned from the trailers.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I guess I'm on board with this. This is all right. And then for me, the very last thing that happens in the film, it changed my perspective on everything that was happening. And I think this is a twist for me because what was happening earlier in the film was starting to borderline the science fiction for me a little bit. And I was like, wait, I wasn't buying the whole science behind the identities and being able to do some of the things that they say you're going to be able to do physiologically.
Yeah.
And I didn't buy it fully. And then at the end, this one little thing happens and I'm like, oh, I get this now. Like I looked at it with a whole new light. Okay. I'm okay with this. I'm okay with the way that things happened. And we might have to talk about this on a later episode with spoilers and all that stuff because there's a whole lot of like new doors that could potentially
implications
open.
are definitely there for what that revealed. I think for me, they weren't significant enough to warrant what a twist kind of in my mind. But for you, you're saying that really did.
Right. It changed the way I looked at the whole movie. Like I want to go back and watch it again and be like with that lens, you know?
Yeah.
But I can't. But so here's the thing. I did really like the movie. I didn't like it as much as I was hoping.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because it took so long for it to pay off for me.
Yeah.
But and it's tough. There are some tough like topics in this. There's some like flashback scenes that you kind of get some character development out of that are hard to watch at times.
Yeah, those were really rough, I think, for a lot of people that were experiencing that. And I personally just seeing that and knowing of that and being familiar with people that have gone through experiences like that, it was a really rough and very difficult scene to see. And the way they portrayed it felt very honest.
Right.
It didn't feel like it was over sensationalizing it or, making it this non-important thing.
Right.
That to me, and I think some people may actually warrantedly say that was a twist of the sorts for them, not to downplay it, but to just say that like that really did inform the character. And because you're left at the beginning of the film wondering why this character, which is played by Anya Taylor-Joy,
right,
and she did, I think, a really good job. I think she, for the most part, did a great job with the script and everything. And she was also in The Witch, which I haven't seen, but I heard that was a great film as well. I probably need to see that at some point. But she did a really good job of portraying this character that was kind of like numb and dead in a way and very distant. And so you don't really get an understanding of why that is until later. And then you get an even deeper sense of why that is. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, it really makes sense why she's acting the way that she's acting, why she's treating people the way they were.
Right.
And so I thought they did a really good job. I mean, that made sense to me. And
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of other films with M. Night where it's like, why did they do that? Like, what's the motivation for their character to act in a certain way? Yeah. So, any other thoughts, Matt?
No, I recommend it though if you're a fan of Shyamalan. It's probably one of his better ones.
Yeah.
At least way better than The Happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, what on a scale 1 to 100, A to F, where would you rank this one?
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a B, maybe slight B plus.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. Again, I felt really not as invested until the end, and then it kind of wanted me to. It's kind of calling me to look at it again and to look at it through a different angle. But I was invested, just not as much as I wanted to be. But I enjoyed it overall.
Awesome. And I would probably give it a similar rating. I think I'd give it maybe a little bit higher than you.
Okay.
I think it's a pretty solid B plus for me.
Yeah.
And I think it's repaired a bit of the damage that M. Night has done. I don't think it's done something yet where I'm like, okay, you free grace to make whatever film you want at this point.
Right.
It's really going to depend upon what his follow-up is and how he handles that. So looking forward, though, to him potentially making bigger and better films going forward.
Absolutely.
So that is going to be all for our conversation about the film Split. And next we're going to be moving on to another film which was released in December. Well, limited release in December, but now wide released in January, and it is a film called Hidden Figures. So Matt, would you like to lead off that discussion?
Yeah, totally. So Hidden Figures, based on the descriptions, it's based on a true story. A team of African-American women provide NASA with important mathematical data needed to launch the program's first successful space missions. Mm-hmm. So this, I guess, just kind of in a general sense, takes place during the space race era in the early 60s.
Yes, the Cold War era.
Right, yep. So to kind of kick it off, first of all, Theodore Melfi is the director of this film and also stars Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe. Mm-hmm. So I apologize if I said that wrong. Okay. But just the initial impression I had was, wow, I can't believe I've never heard of this like historical event before. Mm-hmm. You know, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the beauty of movies in general.
Yeah.
Is that they can shine light on all these things. And I think it's a wonderful, wonderful story of this overcoming these ridiculous just things that these ladies had to go through. And overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good film. So if I were to dive into it further, mm-hmm. After just being baffled that this is an actual thing that happened, I wish that this film would have been a little bit harder edge. It's PG.
Yeah.
And you could tell in the movie while watching it. Like, I felt like they were holding punches. I felt like, or pulling punches. I felt like it was very mild when I felt like it could have been there could have been a little bit more oomph, you know, a little bit more zing to it to just kind of emphasize what was happening was wrong in every sense of the term, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like the film would have benefited from that. However, I will say this, the studio probably didn't see it that way, and it probably benefits on the financial side a little bit more to have it
get
PG.
A larger audience by keeping in the PG range.
Right. Overall, I thought the acting was great.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed seeing everybody. I was really surprised when I saw Kirsten Dunst in it.
Yeah.
I was like, I forgot about her. I saw her in Midnight Special, and then after that, I was kind of it.
She's kind of dropped off the map pretty significantly.
Right. And then Kevin Costner, I thought was actually really good. In this movie, and I'm not a huge Kevin Costner fan.
Yeah.
But this was great. This was a great platform for him as well.
Yeah.
Also, I'm trying to think of his name. Oh, Jim Parsons.
Yes,
all right?
Jim Parsons.
Sheldon on The Big Bang.
Yeah.
That was the hardest part for me.
Okay.
Is getting over that. I haven't seen him in anything other than...
Do you feel like he did a good enough job sort of distancing himself from the character from The Big Bang, or was it just you kind of overcoming your preconceived idea of who he is?
I don't know. I feel like maybe the character wasn't far enough removed from his Big Bang Theory character because he goes from being a super genius to a genius. You know?
Another kind of a genius of a different sort.
Right. his weird quirks and mannerisms were gone.
Yeah.
But there was still this like odd vibe about him that was like, I'm getting some Sheldon vibes just a little bit, not like in your face.
Yeah, a lot of it with the looks. I mean, he does this thing in the show where he kind of looks to the side and then he kind of looks at somebody and he kind of bounces back and forth.
Right.
And he was doing a little bit of that mannerism where I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, I see Sheldon. Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I was impressed.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me was not knowing about it and then learning about this incredible story.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like I've seen a lot of really good true story based films lately. I love it at the end. I love it at the end when they show the real people.
Yeah.
Give some of the synopsis of what happened after the fact and all of those things. I love it when that happens. They did that, and I thought it tied up really nicely. Other than I felt like they could have gone a little bit further with it.
I would agree with you. So I think we saw this one actually pretty similarly. I think the description that you put there of it being a PG film, I didn't think about that, but that's actually probably a huge aspect to what I think a lot of things about the film that I wasn't satisfied with, that I felt like they could have handled better. Overall, I still think it was a really good film, and I agree that this is definitely a story I'm glad was told. I think it was very important to share that these women have done this amazing work in both science, but also, as women and as people that are fighting for, Black people. I think altogether it's a great story to be shared for those reasons. But there was definitely some aspects with the overall story that I felt didn't compel me as strongly as they could have. If it didn't, it ended up kind of feeling almost like a dramatized version of a reenactment in a way.
Okay.
And there was a moment where I think it's about like a quarter of the way into the film where we have who's more or less our main character. It's this lady named Catherine, who's played by Taraji Henson. And hopefully I'm not ruining her name there, but she has this moment where she's basically had to run back and forth from the bathroom because she's using the segregated bathroom. Segregation's still in existence.
In Virginia.
Yeah. And so she's running back and forth in the bathroom, and her boss, played by Kevin Costner, is constantly wondering where she's at. And so he's like, she finally gets back, and she just came back from there, and she's soaked from the rain, and she's just at her wit's end. And she has this moment where she lashes out, and she's just like, rah, and she's like screaming, and yelling. And the sad thing about it is that I feel this is probably fair. I mean, I do understand why she felt that way, but I felt like they hadn't properly built to that.
Oh, to that point.
So it felt too far. And I was like, if you had spent more time really developing, I think, her as a character in my mind, it seemed like the main issue that I had was, in any story, you want to see that the characters go through a natural story arc.
Right.
And you want to see them start off in this one place and then move to another place, because that's a good story, And you want to know how the events that are taking place impact them and change them. And overall, is it good, bad? Is it bad? Is it staying the same? How is it going to happen that they're going to be different at the end of the film? And I felt like throughout the course of this film, there wasn't really a strong sense of change that I felt like they were undergoing. It was definitely the people around them.
Right.
And I get the reason for that, not at all. I totally get that the purpose for that might be to show that, yes, the people around her did realistically and rightly need to change, but it didn't remove the fact that I wanted to see each of them go through their own story arcs, right? So their arcs ended up more being just that they were in a better position, that they had started off with these people treating them badly, and now they're in a place where the people are treating them well. They're being racist to them at the start, and in the end, they're being maybe a little less racist to them. And that's good. That's important to tell. But at the same time, I think if we had built up and shown how her life had been a little bit different or a little bit more challenging or a little bit more difficult, because it was almost like all three of them are just like perfectly capable and they can just do exactly whatever they want. But the only problem is people that are around them.
Right.
So I think that would have made it a bit more compelling to me. And again, I hope I'm making it very clear that I'm glad this story was told.
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
I think it was an important thing to share. I think they just kind of, they hit the easy notes with it. They kind of were like, this was the story that happened, and this, and this happened.
The PG thing you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, I really like the scene that you're describing.
Yeah.
But I understand that there wasn't that arc to get to that point. The parts that fell flat to me were more of the like personal life stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of the work. And I think it's important to know that, because if you didn't get any of that, you'd be like, well, what was her personal life like? But as the film was progressing, the way that it was shot, directed, and just written, I would say the average moviegoer is more concerned with what was happening in the workplace.
Yeah.
But it was important to tell some of those things, but I felt like it slowed down just a little bit in those moments.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think overall it's still a good film for me. Matt, what would you rate this on a scale of A to F?
I'll give it a A-, 90.
Cool. I think I would actually give this one a B-, a B+.
Okay.
Sorry. So not quite there. I think the other thing that really, and I'm a huge snub for cinematography. I think this film had okay cinematography. It didn't blow me out of the water. There was some shots that were pretty cool. So don't get me wrong. It's not like it's bad by any means, but it wasn't like blowing me out of the water with some of the shots that they'd put together. It felt good though.
Yeah, absolutely.
So next up, Matt, we're going to be talking about a film that I think you haven't seen yet.
I haven't seen it yet.
Right. So we'll have some interesting time to discuss this. And I should say the last two films, we didn't have any discussion prior to this.
Right.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we weren't able to see them together. Hopefully
that'll happen in the future.
Yeah, hopefully in the future we'll have more time to see films together. But so the next film we're going to be talking about is a film called The Founder, and this is directed by John Lee Hancock. It stars Michael Keaton, Nick Offerman, John Carroll Lynch, and basically this is the story of Ray Kroc, who is a salesman who basically turns two brothers' innovative fast food eatery, McDonald's, as you probably know what it is, into one of the biggest restaurant businesses in the world with a combination of ambition, persistence, and ruthlessness. Once again, thank you, IMDb. And so I wanted to talk about this film just briefly. I don't think we need to go too far into it. This was a film that I had put on my most anticipated, and I think you had agreed was a pretty highly anticipated film for you as well.
Yeah, I remember we talked about it a couple episodes ago, and we were anxious to see it.
Yeah, and I think there was a lot of aspects to this story that really just were hitting me like right in all the right places. You know, Michael Keaton is going to get in there and he's going to act it, and I think that I like Nick Offerman. I think he's a great actor. I think John Lynch, he's good, but I haven't seen him in too much outside of this film, to be honest, that he's really hit a lot of. And I think also John Lee Hancock does these really good films. You know, he did The Blind Side, which was this really strong film. He did Saving Mr. Banks, which I thought was also this, surprise success for me. So I had a lot of hopes for it. And I wouldn't say that it disappointed, but I would say that it didn't necessarily go as far or as good as I would have wanted it to. I think the thing that this story really does super well is it tells you the story of Ray Kroc, and it tells you the story of who he is and the kind of person that he is. And it's an interesting story because they don't just show you a guy that's selfish, that's egotistical, that's all about making the sale, which you would kind of expect for something like this, but they show you a guy he's got flaws and he's got foibles and he's down on his luck and he's not being super successful and he has a horrible marriage, which I'm assuming is a lot of his fault, but he has a very unhappy, sort of unsupportive relationship with his wife. And then sort of through luck or sheer, good fortune, he comes across these two brothers that have this really innovative idea and then realizes though that like, wow, this could be something.
Right.
And he's able to slowly convince them like, hey, let me do something with this. Let me take this on and grow this into what I believe it could be. And he becomes this salesman, not for himself and not for what he is and who he is, but the salesman of an idea, which is McDonald's. And it's really interesting because he doesn't, it's not like an immediate thing as it shouldn't be, but it does slowly build. And I think one thing that it would have been better for me is if he had faced a few more hurdles.
Okay.
Because he kind of like, after a certain point, you kind of are like, okay, well, this is just going forward and it's just going to happen. And there's no dip in the second, the end of the second act sort of a thing.
Right.
There's a little bit of that, but it's more of just like a transition into a new lifestyle. And he is this guy though, that Ray Kroc, his character is, he's like just smart enough to be dangerous. And he's compelling and interesting, and he plays this kind of two-faced guy at times where he will do what he thinks is right. And the thing I will say about him as well is that he is really compelled to follow a certain standard of quality and what he believes is right. I mean, there's a scene where he's basically been interacting with these guys, these country club folk, and finally got them to sort of buy into the franchise idea of McDonald's. And he goes to one of the restaurants that they've started up as this franchise and recognizes that this guy is running this really poorly. And he's doing a horrible job with it. And he actually goes in, he gets one of the burgers, and he confronts the guy. He walks all the way to the golf course with the burger, I'm guessing, or drives her there, whatever, with the burger, and confronts the guy and like throws it in his face. And he's like, "What are you doing here? This is horrible." So it like shows you that he's a guy he's committed to the cause. He's committed to the quality of the restaurant and the name that it shares. And so you kind of connect with him in that way. But then he does these horrible things, at other times where you can tell he's just been probably very emotionally abusive to his wife, which is probably, I'd say, out of all the bad things he did in the script, that's probably the worst thing that he's done, is the way he treats his wife kind of over the course of the story. It's played by Laura Dern. And and so she's his wife, and she's at the beginning, she's very unsupportive, but you get the sense that this is because he's been trying to do this sales thing for so long now, and he's always on the road, and he's never there for her, that maybe it's more of like a, one informs the other. Yeah. And so she basically ends up then kind of getting in on bad for him. She kind of puts herself out there to start supporting him then after this McDonald's thing really starts becoming successful, and he keeps pulling the rug out from under. He keeps saying like, "Okay, no, we're not doing that now. Oh, it's all about me." And so it's really sad to actually watch. And I think that's probably one of the deepest bads that you could say he does. He did some other stuff with, there's another lady in the film and some stuff that I would say, but so I thought it was interesting. I think some elements that really I didn't like, I'm talking a lot of goods here, I didn't like the music. Okay. I felt like the music overall had this weird playful tone at times where it was like, it would be the serious moment that people were dealing with these like deep kind of, betrayals and pain. And it was kind of like, do, it was like this almost playful type kids music. And I'm thinking, why did you do that? And I think the other thing I would say is the cinematography wasn't as good as I was hoping for it to be. There was definitely some shots, and this might be more of an editing thing and a directorial thing, but it felt very rapid at a couple times, and there was like a couple shots I'm like, maybe you could have held that out a little longer, or maybe picked a main, there's a shot you can take which basically is a framing shot, and it sets up like an entire type thing, and they tended to jump away from that really quick. And so instead of like giving us time to really take in something, and there was definitely some key shots like that where they did do that, but I felt like they were mixing in, they also did a thing where they mixed in some footage from kind of back in the past, so it was like it almost ended up feeling like a documentary where they're showing like the American dream and war, and they're showing these clips of different things, and it felt very weird, and because I think especially mixed with the music, I gotcha. It ended up being that way. So overall, I really enjoyed it, but I wouldn't say it hit it out of the park for me. I think it's one of those, like, it was good to see, and it's a better film, but it's not the best ever. And I would also say it's not necessarily something you have to see in theaters. I think Michael Keaton is probably the key to the film. Yeah. He did a really good job, but you can probably watch it at home and get the exact same experience.
Are you rooting for anybody in this movie?
That's kind of I think that's also part of the problem is you're kind of rooting for Michael Keaton, sort of.
Even though he does terrible things.
Yeah, but you understand why he's doing some of the things that he's doing, because, Nick Offerman plays this character who's very specific. He's very perfectionist oriented. It's how they were able to create this system. They go through this, and that was one really cool part. They go through the system of, and I don't know if it's true or not, but how they created this quick turnaround McDonald's thing. Right. Because you even see in the beginning of the film, they did a really good job of at least giving you some character development, some story for Michael Keaton's character, because you see him going around trying to make these sales and being very unsuccessful at it, and the times that he's having to just sit and wait, and he's like traveling and he gets the wrong order, and so you're connecting with, okay, well, he recognizes McDonald's because of the things that he's been through. And there's definitely some good dialogue. I think that there's like a line where he says in the very beginning that basically, is it supply that creates demand or demand that creates supply? And it's something along those lines where basically he's saying that if you provide supply, then demand will increase, which usually goes against what you usually you learn in beginners economics and stuff. Yeah. But it plays out throughout the course of the script, where you start realizing that, is he being now supplied with this idea, with this restaurant that's creating an increased demand on his own part and the people around him? Or is it the opposite, that he always had this demand that he was trying to meet, and now he's just been supplied with something, and so it goes up? So it's a good film. Matt, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah. So, and I asked that question because for me personally, if I can't root for a character, then I feel like that's one of the biggest mistakes that a writer or a film could just do in general. Because that's what we do. We attach ourselves to people that we like. We like different characters, whether it be a TV show or a movie. And if there's nobody to root for, or if there's somebody that like sometimes you can root for him, but other times he's just kind of a jerk, you know, like I don't know if, you know, that's something. It helps elevate the story emotionally. Yeah. And so I'm a little bummed out by that. I'm still planning on checking it out. But if you were to rate this thing overall, what would you rate it?
I would actually get, and keep saying it, B+, I think, for this one as well.
B+ is across the board.
Yeah, it's funny how I'm just B+ in it all day. I should get a stamp.
Exactly.
So that is all for our talk on reviews. We are going to move into a section now that we call Upcoming Film Talk, or opening this week, or films that are going to come out really, really, really soon.
In a couple days, yeah.
Yeah, in a couple days. So Matt, would you like to take it away?
Yes, absolutely. So opening this week, just so you can all know what's happening, is the quality films Resident Evil, The Final Chapter, and A Dog's Purpose. So these are your favorite movies ever. Joel, why?
Oh, geez.
I was kidding.
Yeah, not my favorites. I'm not a huge fan of Resident Evil series. A Dog's Purpose is sort of being changed in name right now to A Dog's Controversy.
Yes, it's true.
We can talk a little bit if you want. Matt, are you looking forward to these at all?
Okay, yes. So A Dog's Purpose, I never really was looking forward to it.
Yeah, I didn't know anything about it.
Just didn't really seem like it was hitting any of the notes for me. I was like, man, okay, whatever. But there's a ton of controversy right now behind it. They canceled the premiere.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
And the press junket leading up to it. So like, it's not getting any of that like opening like marketing.
Wow.
So yeah, I wasn't really on board to begin with. Not because it looks like a terrible movie, but just because I don't feel like I want to watch it.
Yeah, we should. We're talking about it. We should mention that. I guess the controversy is around a video that was released of them filming the dog that's involved, or one of the dogs that's involved in the filming, and it's being abused, or potentially being abused. I don't want to say it is, but it's alleged that it's being abused in the video.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's all that controversy. Wasn't hitting the notes for me before. Probably won't check it out unless the fans are clamoring for a review.
We get 50, 100 emails
right,
about that.
Exactly. If that happens, oh man. Okay, so Resident Evil, on the other hand, so this is totally a guilty pleasure like movie franchise for me. These movies are not good movies. Let me make that abundantly clear. They are not good movies, but there's something about them. I played all the video games and I really enjoy watching them, and I'm excited to let this thing go out with a bang, hopefully. And maybe Mila and her husband can go work on other projects that are more meaningful. But I'm excited to see how they wrap this thing up. The last couple, okay, so the big thing is I remember seeing the first one and liking it, but I was in high school when it came out, and my perspective on films has matured and changed quite a bit since then. But it still holds a place in my heart. And again, it's just that nostalgia, that want to have a fun time. I remember seeing it with my dad and all that stuff. So we go to see these movies and that sort of a thing. But as far as this film is concerned, it looks like a bunch of the same chaotic mess of craziness and slow-mo Mila Jovovich. And that's really about it. The last two films have been weird for me because they feel like the same movie. Like
just the last two.
If you were to just the last two.
Just the last two.
If you were to show trailers for them, I probably wouldn't be able to tell them apart. But this one, I hope they can wrap it up. We'll see what happens, and I'm sure you'll be in line opening night, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
You know me. It's hard to have negative amount of anticipation or desire to see a film, but these would probably rank close to the 0 mark. Right. I think I've fun experience of this. I got to see them release the trailer, I guess, for the last one, The Retribution. Yeah, when I was at Comic-Con. I think I mentioned this, and Mila Jovovich was I'm not gonna lie, she was just acting really crazy. You know, she was like laying down on the stage and freaking out and saying all these things, and I'm like, what is going on with her? And it, like, any semblance of like these being rational films with like rational characters thinking in like a rational way, I'm like, she can't even act rational in real life. So not to be judgmental, you know, who knows? Maybe she was just nervous. She could have been in character. She could have been nervous or something like that. I think the only reason I'm upset about this film, because I mean, studios make horrible films all the time and release them because they know that they're going to get people out there. I think the only reason I'm getting upset about it is because I feel like it's again, I don't trust that this is the final chapter. I mean, they're saying it's the final chapter.
I feel like you name it the final chapter. You can't do anything else.
Yeah, but I mean, they did that with Final Destination. I'm pretty sure like they did The Final Destination and then they called it like The Final Destination 2. And it's like, you know, they're going to, if 10 years from now, they feel like they're going to get money from making another one of these and they can get a new cast, they're probably going to restart it.
It's going to reboot. I'm pretty sure they're going to reboot it at some point in time. Everything gets rebooted.
Yeah, so that's my only reason for not being like okay with this. I'm like, just stop, just end. Please just put it out of its misery.
Well, I'm so excited that you got to share with everybody how excited you are for these films.
So excited.
Yeah. But next, I want to dive into the Tube Talk segment of our show. Now, we are just a couple of weeks out from the mid-season premiere of season 7 of The Walking Dead.
Woohoo.
Now, I know we've had a chance to speak about this for a little bit. We have strong opinions, especially about the first half of season 7. But yeah, I wanted to get your take on maybe what to expect. How are you feeling about the season overall up till this point, just so you could share with everybody?
Yeah, well, someone's going to get eaten. Someone's going to get shot.
Seems plausible.
They're going to probably, you know, beat down somebody and win and save the day. I'm kind of at a point with this show, and this was, I think, the season that's done it for me, where it's pretty much jumped the shark in all facets. I think the real thing for me was the beginning episode of this season, where it really felt like they were so manipulating the audience and so manipulating us to like, oh, look how sad this is, and like, aha, you thought, but not really, but really.
Right.
And I felt like they did that one too many times. You know, there's that scene where, and you know, spoiler alert, I guess, you know, Glenn gets killed off right after they've killed another character, and they basically, it's like this shock in a way that they're killing Glenn after they've already offed somebody else. And so then they do this thing, which was bad enough because of the way they killed him, where they kind of made him look like an idiot. You know what I mean? And everybody's like, oh, well, it's like that in the comic books if you read the comic books.
Right.
It might be like that in the comic books, but that doesn't mean that it makes good television, especially when they're telling two different stories. It's like they're related, but television and comic book are completely different, and you interact with them differently and you feel about them differently. So the way they manipulated that death, and then to show the scene where they're kind of all sitting around the table having like the spaghetti dinner with each other, and Glenn's like holding his child and stuff. And I'm like, okay, now you're really just manipulating this to be like the most painful that it can be. So I would say, and then after that, the show just got so boring to me. And it felt like everything that happened, we've seen 16 times before, not 16, but probably at least realistically 2 to 3 times before, where it's like they get beat down by somebody and then they have to rise up, and then, but they're just stretching it out for the whole half of a season, where I'm like, literally we know in just a bit, they're going to have to rise up and they're all going to have to attack him. So they could have shown that in 2 episodes.
Right.
So yeah, what are your thoughts, Matt?
I have similar, not quite, feelings about the first half of the season. Again, I know Joel mentioned it earlier, spoilers. There's going to probably be some minor spoilers. If you haven't seen it, then sorry.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel as strongly about negatively about the first episode.
Yeah.
That I know a lot of people felt that way, the same way that you're feeling.
Well, their numbers, they've actually shown it. I'm not trying to interrupt, but they had their numbers are now, after that season, dropped off by over 1 million viewers.
Right.
And they're at the same level that they were in the 3rd season of the show.
Right.
At this level right now.
So what's funny about that though is it's still the highest watched show on television.
It is.
Even with that drop off.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the same way. I didn't feel overall manipulated. I felt sad for that whole story segment, and I thought it was. For me, it worked in setting up this Negan character, that he's just this crazy, psychotic, evil dude.
Yeah,
and I feel like his character, they've done a good job at keeping him crazy, kind of just in the weird things that he does, and the weird, just his choice of words, and just how he talks to people.
Yeah.
And I thought that's been carried through, but I agree wholeheartedly. The first half of this season has been, for the most part, boring.
Yeah.
Pointless to me.
Yeah.
I understand setup episodes, but not 5 of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And so I felt like that's what they're doing. This whole first half is setting up this second half, which I appreciate. My favorite episode was episode 2, where you get introduced into the kingdom and Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I really enjoyed that whole thing.
Yeah.
I like Ezekiel. The last episode I really liked. Last 2 episodes were back and forth for me, but I like the character Jesus. I think he's awesome. He's going to be a new fan favorite, I think, for a while.
Yeah.
But I'm more so just excited to see where it goes, because I feel like this next season it's got to pay off in a big way, because the first half was kind of a dud a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think if you can say there was any success of this first half of the season, it was to set Negan up as a really bad dude.
Yeah.
So will that pay off? I don't know. Maybe it'll pay off. I tend to feel like probably not as satisfyingly as you would want it to be. And that's just based upon how they've done this with other bad characters that have kind of risen up in the show. I think they could have done that very simply. I mean, there was nothing wrong in my mind with killing, Abraham, and there was nothing wrong with killing, sorry, spoilers again here, but, there's nothing wrong with killing off Glenn. But it was the way that they did it. And then additionally, I think they could have shown Negan to be this really, because 90% of each of these episodes is basically Negan just terrorizing people and just making them go, I'm really scared for some reason, because you can't just kill them. You can't just shoot them, because if you do, then worse things are going to happen.
That was so frustrating. There was several times where somebody could have gotten rid of Negan.
Yeah, and you're left with this concept of why? Especially when you see these characters have gone through this 3 times before, with the Terminus and with the governor. It's why don't you just take this guy out, and then deal with the consequences of it? But we'll see. I mean, maybe they've gotten some information, some feedback of what people are thinking about the episodes, and the showrunner is like, we gotta get this done.
Yeah, and it comes back in 2 weeks, so we're not gonna have to wait too long to see how they set it up. Hopefully it's not a really kind of a dud mid-season premiere, but we'll see. But yeah, that'll wrap up our segment for Tube Talk. I want to take a couple minutes real quick, and I made a foreshadow to this earlier in the segment with Joel the Last Cunningham, but we got news today that the new Star Wars Episode 8 is going to be titled The Last Jedi.
Ooh, a big reveal.
Ooh. Yeah. Thoughts on that, Joel? How do you feel about it?
I think it's pretty cool. I like the name a lot. I think it inspires some questions. I mean, it definitely is well, is The Last Jedi Luke, or is it somebody else? Is it Rey?
Right.
It's probably between, in my mind, if they are specifically saying that this is about The Last Jedi, I mean, if you're trying to answer that question, it would probably be between Rey and Luke. But I don't know. I mean, it's weird to say that there's one Last Jedi, considering that, it's always been kind of light side, dark side.
Right.
So we'll see. And I'm still really excited about that. It doesn't do anything to hamper or improve or disprove, the idea of the film in my mind. So
I like a couple of things about it. And this is coming from the official Disney marketing department or whatever.
Yeah.
So The Last Jedi, I'm way more inclined to accept initially than I did The Force Awakens.
Okay.
So The Force Awakens, I was like, The Force Awakens? It just didn't
Was he
seem like
sleeping?
It didn't seem like a title to me.
Does he need a Starbucks?
Even though it had the Force in the title, it didn't feel Star Wars to me. But this I'm way more on board right off from the get-go. I think it's real straightforward. I think it's a pretty solid indication of Luke. Yeah. But we'll see. Maybe there's a twist in there we don't know about.
I'm assuming it's probably Luke as well at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
And
especially considering the way they ended it, with the reveal of Luke.
Right. So in the tweet, in the message that was sent out, they have the Star Wars logo, and it says The Last Jedi. Yeah. But the Star Wars logo, first time ever in one of these promo materials, is not yellow. It's red. Yeah. Which to me indicates that it could potentially be maybe a little darker, maybe a little bit more of the dark side, and Kylo Ren and Snoke and all those people come back, in craziness. But I don't know, any hints or... Yeah, I mean, based upon a lot of the stuff that I've read news-wise of the different, Domhnall Gleeson, and they're talking about basically this upcoming film. They've all seemed to indicate that it is, and without spoiling it, but
that is a bit of a darker take. It's similar in style, as you will, to, you know, Empire Strikes Back, where they're trying to get into a bit of a darker territory with the film. And I think that plays into it. And I think that definitely indicates that maybe, especially with a name, that, you know, there's kind of maybe 2 Jedi right now. So maybe one of them does have to go. So maybe some death is going to be involved somewhere along the line there.
We'll see what happens. Either way, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, same here. So that's going to wrap things up for us today on the podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we would love to hear from you. If you've got any questions, comments, agreements, disagreements, we would love to hear those from you. So we gave you the email at the beginning. Definitely send us an email if you get a chance. That is realreviewmedia@gmail.com. Real spelled REEL. And we'd also love for you to connect with us on Facebook and keep in track in mind of all the different stuff that we've got going on. So it's facebook.com/realreviewmedia.
Also, hey, we have a website, guys.
Oh, we do have a website.
We have a website, realreviewmedia.com.
Yes.
Check it out.
It's a great place to get connected as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks for promoting that, Matt.
Yeah. Thought I'd plug that.
So thanks for joining us, everybody. It's been real.
It's been real.